Welcome to Taste Buds. I'm Debra Eckerling, goal strategist, writer, and foodie. And today I'm speaking with Nicky Pitman, who's director of Shemesh Farms. Welcome, Nicky. So nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Deb.
So I know that Shemesh Farms is amazing, but will you please share what it is so everybody else can know too?
Sure. It's a social enterprise, a small herb farm that provides meaningful employment to people with diverse abilities and special needs.
So farming, well, it's good for everybody, but is probably especially good for this population, or what do you think?
Yeah, like you said, I think it's good for everybody. I mean, anybody who comes to the farm, whether we're staff or volunteers or the farm fellows, that's what we call our workers and their coaches. I think there is something about being connected to nature, that we're interconnected with nature, that just makes the world a better place. But I do think that in particular, the population that we work with, I've seen people just come alive and just feel so much a part of because our natural nature is the natural rhythm of the environment and the smells and the tastes and the sights of all the different plants that we grow are just they're healing. Like we certainly we grow a ton of lavender and rosemary. It's prolific where we are. However, those aren't the only healing herbs. And to be able to, for instance, the other day we were working on sorting, which is when you remove the leaves from the stems. And we were sorting lemon sorrel. And I don't know if you've ever seen or tasted lemon sorrel, but it's wonderful in salads. You might have had it in salads, so it's got that kind of leaf. Um, but one of our coaches was like, what is makes it lemony? I said, well, taste it. I mean, we try to encourage people to taste our herbs. But you're working with them, taste them, smell them, be with them. And so these two coaches tasted the herbs and then they were like, can we have more? And there's something, that's so what we all love food. Well, most of us love food, and I do. And there's nothing like something that tickles your taste buds, as your show discusses, that especially when it's a new flavor and your whole mouth erupts with that deliciousness, right? And then especially when it's right from the vine. There's nothing like that. That's why people are so gung ho on farmers markets, I think.
And so, how did you come to work with them?
Um, the Shalom Institute, which is our umbrella organization, also houses Camp JCA Shalom. And I grew up in here in LA and I went to Camp JCA and then worked at the Jewish Community Centers was my first job. And then I moved away. I was gone from Los Angeles for a very long time. And last year, before I moved back, this job came open and I had the skills and they hired me. So.
That sounds like a really nice, like, welcome home sort of a gig, right?
Yes, in fact, I just had my year anniversary of coming back to LA. Next month will be my year at Shemesh, and it's a homecoming. And so much of my growing up was around camp and nature and being in community with people. And Shemesh Farms is all that and more. So it's a beautiful thing.
I think you answered my question, which was gonna be, what is it that you love so much about working on the farm, with these farm fellows in that community is community? Go ahead, Shamrock.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My background is theater. I've worked in all areas of the theater for starting as an actor and then writer, director, producer, educator. And the thing about Shemesh Farms is the ensemble, right? Which was my favorite thing about theater work and collaboration. And that comes in many different forms. The creativity that comes, the spontaneity that comes, the joy that comes, and that feeling of being a part of something bigger than ourselves. And I think that's the most exquisite thing. And so I think for anybody who is really gravitates toward community building, collaboration, it doesn't matter what the setting is. it's wherever that is, but there's something extra special about being in this particular community, um, amidst these incredible gardens.
It feels like every day is like a mini production, right? Because you start off with your circle time. I know this because we've talked before. And then everybody does their thing and then they come back at the end of the day to regroup. I probably should have let you say that. But isn't that really just like the vibe? Everybody's working together towards this goal, whether it is food or a production.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, if music be the food of love, play on, right? It is. It's so. You talked about our opening and closing circle, and it's the time we come together and then we leave. And we worked in different places in the farm. We have what we call like three different modules of the garden and that composting, and we also have hydroponic towers, which we can talk about in a moment. But then we have the kitchen area, and then we have the office and workspace area, and it's like everybody's doing their thing in these separate places, but it's all for one greater purpose. And when we come back together, we get to share those experiences with one another, and take what was best about our morning, and then go off into the world and in our day.
And when I was growing up, I well, I was a theater kid adjacent, so I ended up doing crew and tech. But it's really the same thing. Everybody is a part of creating it. It doesn't matter what your role. We're in LA, film business. You need all the roles to work together for that finished product.
Absolutely. Exactly. Exactly. And so, like, just backtracking, we have an in-soil garden and we have 22 hydroponic towers. So, for those who don't know what a hydroponic tower is, it's a wonderful, it's wonderful because you can grow your own food anywhere. You don't need soil. It can sit on cement, can sit on ours sit on patios. They can sit on rooftops. They can be inside if you have LED lighting. And our hydroponic towers are 20-gallon tanks on the bottom, and then the tower goes upwards, and the water circulates up and down. You just need a little bit of electricity. It doesn't cost a lot, and a little bit of water, depending where you live. Of course, if it's hotter, you need a little bit more, but the water recirculates. You feed nutrients through the water system, and the plants hang down in these sort of pockets on the tower. And so their roots get all the water, and then the plants just they grow like beautifully, beautifully. And you can harvest right from the towers. You can take them out and plant them in soil. You can replenish them. They're really wonderful, and they're also wonderful for a couple of different reasons when we talk about community, especially inclusivity is we have people who might be in a wheelchair or use a walker or just might struggle to bend over. You don't have to bend over into a garden. You can just take your whole body right up to the tower and harvest from there. And also, if you need to move, which we're going to be having to move our farm in the next few months, is you just stop the tower, you take everything out, you move the tower, you put everything back in. No harm, no foul. It's
And
pretty
so
cool.
people can now I've grown a couple things hydroponically at home. You finish the green onions and then you put them in the water and then they grow. But that's so far the only thing I've been successfully able to grow at home. Do you have any other tips for people who want to test out?
Yeah, I mean, I look, I think plants are their own thing, right? Like everything else in the world, we don't really have control over everything, but we can do our best. And some plants are just like all of a sudden we'll look at the tower one day and they look yellowed or they whatever, and we're not sure. Maybe the water stopped, maybe the nutrients just didn't get to the plant, maybe something in the air, the weather, maybe it was that particular seed that just didn't work out. So you kind of have to play with it. It doesn't take that much care, especially if you're one of those people who says, I'm not a plant person, I kill everything, right? They are pretty easy. And the onions grow amazing. I mean, the onions are stellar, but I would just try some different things and different, kinds of lettuce, arugula. parsley, whatever it is that you fancy, just put it in there. Sometimes basil is, our farm manager calls basil our diva plant because it just does what it wants when it wants. You're like, come on, basil, we need you. So,
And what about for dirt farming? Is there a secret to make it? Because yes, I'm one of those with a non-green thumb.
so I think it's a matter of practice. So I'm new to this too. I am learning. I mean, I feel like I've gotten a crash course in this past year on how to garden, how to compost, how to work with hydroponics, all of it. So I'm new to it too. But what I have seen is that making sure that when you know what kind of sunlight you're getting, what kind of plants require what kind of sunlight, how much water they need. If you can put it on a drip system, it's kind of all the better. I also am very aware that we, with our compost, because we have a huge hand work compost double pile in our space, and over the past year, we have not had to buy soil or fertilizer. We've simply used our compost, and it's kind of magical. They call it nature's gold a lot of the time. And it is. I've seen what happens when we pour new compost on our plants. All of a sudden, a day later, I'm not kidding. It's sort of like that magic facial stuff. It's like, whoa, whoa, look at you. And then what's really fun about that too is depending on what scraps have been in the compost and it's been turned for like 6 weeks or whatever it is, all of a sudden in our garden, we have what's called volunteers. We have strawberries, we have kale, growing in our compost pile. One day we found potatoes. I mean, new potatoes growing because you never know what's in there. So that's exciting too. So I think it takes patience. I think it takes observation. I think it's trial and error. Our farm manager has done that. She's finally gotten to a place. She's a year ahead of me in terms of employment, and she's finally gotten to a place of like, oh, this is what works. This is what happens when you get gophers. This is what we need to do. Companion planting, right? This is kind of exciting. Is what plants work best with what other plants. Like this plant wards off these insects or wards off the gophers or whatever it is. Or if you plant this one next to that one, this one just grows taller by nature. They're friends. And that's really cool. I mean, I'm learning a ton of stuff that I never knew about. And it's like I go outside all the time, I'm like my babies.
So the plants have their own little community of themselves. So it's the community
They
of people
do.
growing the plants, and then the plants are all friends. So I love that. What do you cook as well?
I do. I don't cook as much as I used to. And I'm single, so I tend to be that Paula Poundstone eat over the sink kind of person all the time. But I do enjoy cooking, and I do enjoy cooking with fresh herbs and fresh vegetables all the time.
Do you have a particular go-to throw together recipe that incorporates wonderful herb flavors that you'd like to share?
Mm. Spaghetti squash, right? I like to half it, put it in the oven, roast it, and then you can use the fork to peel it out like spaghetti. And while that's going on, I'll saute some diced tomatoes, fresh if I can get them. Diced tomatoes, yellow, red, and orange bell peppers, and onions, sliced onions. And I cook that all up, and I'll use like fresh garlic, basil, oregano, uh, and then I put that all together. I throw it over the spaghetti squash once it's in a bowl, and then I sprinkle that with feta cheese.
Ooh,
Pretty
delicious
darn
and
good.
healthy, right? And super
Very.
easy.
It's
And
easy, it's healthy, it's not that expensive. Yeah, anyone can do it. You can't fail at it.
oh, good. So even if you have a non-green thumb, you can easily eat things that makes it feel like you do.
Absolutely. And it's really comforting and it's really great. Like I'm a vegetarian pescatarian. And so like just a bowl of that is a great meal, but you can always use it as a side dish. So I make it a lot if I'm going to somebody's house, and have to bring a side dish.
Oh, it's always good to have that go-to because then you don't have to think. You just know that you love it and that everybody does too. Which is
Absolutely.
why so in the recaps, which you can get at if you go to jewishjournal.com and read about this conversation, we always like to include the recipe because that's the thing that bugs me about cooking shows. Most of them, they like tempt you, but you don't get the recipe. So that's why I always like to
I'll
ask and
send
play
you
a
the
little.
recipe.
Uh, thank you. So we love food, we love community. What do you think is it that connection between the two?
I think, I don't know, I'm venturing here. I don't know. I'm Jewish. We eat, we talk. But you know, I do think enjoying a meal, like really enjoying food and enjoying company. And then there's always something to talk about. You can always go back to the food, of course, right? And isn't it lovely? Like when you go to somebody's house and everybody's bringing a dish and you're like, "Ooh, I love that. Ooh, can I have that recipe?" I mean, that's a starter there. Or, "Oh, I grew these in my garden," or, "I go to this farmer's market," or, "My grandma used to make this," or what, right? Like we get those connections. Years ago when I was teaching, I started a program called or a unit that we did called Born and Bred, celebrating the cultural mosaic of America. And we would have the kids go home and do research and interview their parents and find out, what is your background? You know, are you Irish? Are you Russian? Are you whatever it is, right? And they would come in with a story and a recipe, and every culture has some kind of bread, right? And so it was this idea of born and bred, BRED, but BREAD. And so uh, I had a group of parents that would set up these tables in our auditorium, and each table was a different continent. And the kids would travel in groups, and they would have a bag, and at each table there would be a map, would show the geography. There would be some little artifacts from that country and culture, and then there would be a type of bread that was shared, and sometimes a drink. And the kids would travel and they would collect it almost like passports, right? Like a passport stamp. And we also did other celebrations, like somebody would offer dance. Like there was Greek dancing one year, there was Mexican storytelling one year, there was a game from Australia. You know, there was like different ways of celebrating. And I think that food is so connective. Even kids. I mean, think about when you get your lunch bag and, "Oh, my mom only packed me an apple. My mom packed me 3 Oreos," you know, like, or, you know, the kid who always came with the food from their culture and what that was like for them and what that was like for other kids.
I love how food it's a connection through cultures, but also the way that you present it between cultures because it is common ground. And every food has, I think on the show, people have mentioned every culture has a bread, a pasta, a dumpling, a chicken soup. So I feel like I'm keeping a list of of what of those commonalities because that's what it brings people together and it's yummy, ideally in theory, right?
Yes. No, it's not. And then you have that to talk about too. Remember when mom used to make blah, blah, blah?
Yes, there's the connection whether the food is good or less good. Is there something you know now about farming that you wish you knew when you started this job?
Oh, I wish I knew so many things. I wish I'd been doing this, you know, since I was a kid. You hear about kids that grew up either on a farm or with parents who gardened a lot and that kind of thing. And I think I've always had a deep reverence and respect for nature. And I mean, my thesis, which had nothing to do with gardening, was all about cultivating. And that was in the title, cultivating community connection and compassion in and out of the classroom. So you know, I think that's always sort of been in me. And I actually had gone to an intuitive healer person years and years ago, and she told me I should garden. And I was like, ah, now I'm like, Ooh, shnikes, I should have listened. But here I am now. And so I think I'm just so grateful that I'm having the opportunity, especially now. I mean, like with the idea of our earth crashing in around us and sustainability being so essential for each of us and our planet. And to just have the gift of every day getting to walk out into a garden, to both the in soil and the hydroponic, and to smell and to taste and to see this beautiful growth and what that does, like we talked about in the beginning, what it does for people. There is a calming sense about it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Nicky Pitman, for taking the time to chat today about all things food, community, gardening, and so much more. Where can people learn more about you and Shemesh Farms and the wonderful herbs, etc., that you grow?
You can visit
Cultivate, that you cultivate.
where we cultivate www.shemeshfarms.com. And you can find out everything you need to know. You can purchase our products. You can come, email me and come visit if you're in the area.
And repeat again where you are, because I know.
Right now we are currently in Malibu, California. We used to be up in the mountains above Malibu, above Leo Creo Beach until the Woolsey fire. So right now we're about a mile north of Malibu Canyon on Pacific Coast Highway.
So if you're in the area, look up Shemesh Farms, or if you come visit, or if you just want that taste of wonderful herbs from California, you can learn more on the website. Thank you again, Nicky, so much for coming to spend some time with me. And thank you all for tuning in to Taste Buds with Deb. Don't miss an episode. You can subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. And go to jewishjournal.com to get recipes like the yummy spaghetti squash from Nicky and read the articles that go with each episode. And you can learn more at tastebudswithdeb.com. Until next time, happy gardening and bon appetit.